Hello everyone, my name is Stephen J.B. Davis and I'm your land specialist and residential realtor here in the Bluegrass region of Kentucky. Today you can see that again we are not on my roof, but it's because we are out in Scott County on a piece of protected property. It's gorgeous and you'll see some footage of that later, but I am here with my friends Nicole Zub and Emmanuel Fields, which you'll see in part 2 of this episode, so there will be 2 separate episodes, but they are from the Bluegrass Land Conservancy, and today we are talking conservation easements, and that can apply to anyone that owns any amount of property, really. And there are lots of reasons why you might want to do that. But first, let's learn a little bit about Nicole. So Nicole, hi, thank you so much for driving all this way and for showing me this gorgeous, gorgeous piece of property. How did you get into this world?
Well, I got really lucky, number one. So when I was growing up, I'd always been a lifelong environmentalist. You know, my dad had a garden out in our backyard in South Florida, and I'd always been interested in the environment. And when I went to college, I knew I wanted to study environmental science, and along the way, I got really inspired to get into environmental law.
Wow.
Yeah, and so as I was in law school, I realized too that environmental law is a bit more administrative law than I anticipated it would be. Environmental law isn't quite what you imagine when you like read books about it and see movies about it. And I actually had a friend who got an internship at a land trust, and I started to learn more about conservation easements, and that there was this tool that could be utilized to protect land. It seemed like a very direct impact that I could have on saving the world, right? Because that's why everybody wants to be an environmental lawyer, right? So anyway, when I was at UK finishing up my law degree,
Go Big Blue.
Yeah, I got really lucky, and I went and met with our it was a career services department, and I was looking for an internship. It was before my last year of law school, and she mentioned that a nonprofit was hiring in Lexington, and that it was a land trust. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. That's, you know, my friend had worked at land trust. Interesting. Yeah. So I went and interviewed, and I got lucky enough to land an internship with, at the time it was Bluegrass Conservancy prior to merging. And then I got lucky and they liked me enough and they wanted to keep me, you know,
congrats
full
on
time.
that.
So I've been working with Bluegrass Land Conservancy now since 2016. And so I've kind of been a jack of all trades there, doing everything from the actual, transactional side of a conservation easement, as well as the stewardship side, like after you've protected your land, coming out and doing monitoring and all that good stuff. So it's kind of a best of both worlds. I get to work in the nonprofit world. I get to actually do something that really has an impact on communities around here. It really is. I mean, we are changing the landscape of central Kentucky by placing conservation easements on agricultural land. Yeah. And I get to be outside a lot and meet a bunch of different people. So it's a fantastic merge of all my interests.
That's great. And so with your other interests, do you do a lot of your hobbies revolve around the outdoors, or are you a traveler? Like, do you leave Kentucky a lot? Are you a big concert person? Like,
I wish I could leave Kentucky more often, but I guess we don't really travel as much. My fiance worked in the service industry for a long time, so that is kind of hard to do more travel. But I love hiking, I love camping, we love the gorge. I grew up, but you know, when I grew up, we would go do hikes on the Appalachian Trail. So I've always had kind of a connection with being outdoors. And we've got a cat and a dog, and we take the dog on hikes, and I really wish that we did travel more. But you know, there's a lot of really special things to do in Kentucky. I think it's a really underrated state. As someone who did not grow up here and is a transplant, I think it's
Kentuckian by choice.
Exactly. And it's a place that people kind of overlook and think that, I think in the environment now in our country, I think people think of Kentucky and these states kind of as flyover country, and that it's a place not worth visiting or living, but there's so much that's special about this state.
That's 100% not true. There's so many things to do here.
And there's distinct regions too. You've got Eastern Kentucky, you've got the Central Kentucky Bluegrass region where we are, you've got Western Kentucky, you've got Southern Kentucky. Very distinct ecology and geology.
Absolutely. Sometimes even foods and accents, as I've learned.
Yes.
Sometimes things are totally different. But if you would be so kind just to tell people that are watching what is a conservation easement and why would someone want to get one to protect their land? How would they do that? What is it, and what are the benefits?
Yeah, so a conservation easement is a legal instrument in which you protect your land in perpetuity. And what that means is it's a lengthy document. It's about 40 pages long, and it runs with the land in perpetuity. So it is filed in the county clerk's office. So like anybody pulling title and subsequent, buyers see that there is a conservation easement on this land. And what that does is it restricts development on the property in layman's terms, essentially.
Okay.
So there's a lot of things that you can't do on the property. However, there are still a lot of things that you can do on the property.
And can you just maybe list the top 3 things of can't versus can? Because I think a lot of people think, oh, you can do nothing on this property.
Yeah.
But that's not true.
So top 3 things you can't do. Have a high density residential development.
Okay.
Have a shopping mall.
Okay.
And have like our commercial businesses.
Okay.
I think are maybe like the top 3 things that are coming to mind.
Yeah.
But then I think it's hard to think of all the things you can't do because I feel like those are very simple and really all the things you can do is more extensive. So top 3 things you can do is you can build houses on your land. You can divide your property.
Okay.
And you can continue to farm your property and do all sorts of kinds of farming.
And so it sounds like with a conservation easement, you can really form it to whatever you're wanting to protect and however you're wanting to protect
Yes.
it. It's not an easement fits all.
That's
it's a
exactly
case by
right.
case thing.
It's not a one size fits all. Our staff works extensively with the landowners to craft a document because it is a forever document. And so many people can't think, 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 years down the line. They also have children or grandchildren that they worry, because when you look at an easement, yes, it does devalue the land, right? Because now you can no longer sell it for development, which a lot, in appraisal purposes, they see that as the highest and best use of your land, right?
Sure.
But there's so much that you can still do with it. We can have those future divisions if you have grandchildren that you are, you want them to be able to have a piece of your land.
Preserving legacy, keeping something in the family, and
yeah, and
amazing.
you can also sell it. I think some people have a misconception once you've put an easement on your land that you can't sell it. You can absolutely sell it. And again, that you can run cattle on your land, you can have horses, you can have crops. There's a variety of things that you can still continue to do on your land.
That is super helpful. And then the other thing is, what's a major reason why someone would do it and why they would do it with the Bluegrass Land Conservancy?
Well, I would hope first that one of the biggest reasons that somebody would protect their land is because they want to protect it, right? And that they see value in maintaining our prime farmland soils, our soils of statewide importance. The reason the Bluegrass is considered, as part of the World Monument Fund is because of our distinct soils and landscape. But also, there is a very significant tax benefit that goes along with donating your land. So we as a nonprofit, as an accredited land trust, we are governed by the rules of the IRS.
Okay.
And so there are very specific rules and regulations that we do have to follow, and some of that language has to fall on the easement if people are taking a tax deduction.
Gotcha.
And that tax deduction can be very significant. It can be up to 50% of your adjusted gross income. If you are considered a qualified farmer, again, under the rules of the IRS, you could deduct up to 100% of your adjusted gross income. So it's a
Did you hear that? Up to 100% if you're a qualified farmer.
Exactly. It's a very significant tax benefit, and it can be a really great tool for people in planning. There are also kind of nuanced estate tax benefits that I'm not quite as familiar with, but also that's something that our landowners will work more with our council and director of conservation, Ashley Greathouse. If anybody is wants to
I know her; she's
land.
amazing. Well, I really appreciate that. And in part 2, we're going to be talking to my friend Emmanuel Fields, which I mentioned earlier, but he's going to sort of walk us through how you make sure that easement is, I don't like to use the word enforced, but how it's followed through and to make sure that the things are actually protected the way that the document says.
To add another thing too is that I think people also, you don't have to do it like the year that you approach our organization. We understand that this is a long-term decision, And we have people, frankly, who have approached our organization, have been working through protecting their land over the course of a few years.
Wow.
And so I do want that to be clear to people that it's not something we can get it done in as quick as a few months if people wanted.
Yeah.
Or it can take a few years. We are flexible and we understand that people might want to wait another year, just wait down the line.
Sure.
So I just wanted to let everybody know that as well.
That's a super important thing, and so thank you for adding it.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk to Emmanuel. It's going to be in the next episode, not this one. So stay tuned, or click over, or swipe, or do whatever you're doing. But thank you so much, Nicole.
Thank you so much.
This is so great. So thank you for
Yeah,
allowing me to come.
thank you.
All right.